Today I'm going to talk to you about how to remove and replace the fuel injectors in a 1989 Chevy Vandura 2500 with a 5.7 liter engine. The first thing that you will need to do is you will need to pop the hood and open the hood on the van. You will notice that you can absolutely see nothing of the fuel injection systems up under the hood here. So everything that we do will have to be done through the inside of the van. The next thing you'll need to do is disconnect the battery from the vehicle so that there will be no electrical on the vehicle while you're working and operating the fuel system. The next step will be to go inside the van, and you will locate the engine cover or the dog box cover in the center of the dash. This particular cover has two screws, and I'm pulling back the carpet, and I'll try to get a light in here where we can see what is going on. But there's two screws. There's one on each side at the bottom of at the base of the dog box cover. There's one on this side and then one in front of the passenger seat. There are also two clips here. You have to reach in here and you pop them open and undo them. And then you come over to this side, you reach in here and pop it open, and you open it up at the same time. And then up under the radio, there are two screws. They could be either Phillips head or hex head screws. So in this case they're Phillips, and those have to be removed as well. At that point, you will either need to remove the passenger seat, or in the case of this particular van, it has a custom seat on it. So this seat will swivel around so that when I get everything undone from this dog box, I can just gently pull the dog box back and up, and then I can set it out of the vehicle. After removing the screws and the bolts at the base and undoing the clips, I rotated my passenger seat around so that I could get some clearance in here to lift this dog box up. So at this point, I won't be able to video me actually removing it because I'm videoing with one hand and trying to work with the other. But I'm going to pull the dog box back, and you will notice that on this vehicle it does have a cigarette lighter. So there usually is a wire attached to that. So when I pull the box back, I'm going to reach around and unplug that wire. A lot of times when you're working on vehicles of this age, especially if they've been worked on before, some of the screws will be odd sizes. So just remember, you have one at each side at the base, your two up under the radio, and your two clips, one on each side. And once you undo those, this cover should pop back just like this. After removing the dog box, you have the breather on the engine. You just reach in here and loosen this wing nut on top of the breather. Twist it all the way off. I don't know what I'm going to find in here. Maybe a rat's nest. No, not one in here. But if you'll notice, right down here on this throttle body system, there are two fuel injectors. There's one here and one on this side. So I'm going to remove the rest of this air filter assembly, and up here is where it connects to the hose. Going to the front, you just reach up in there and take a screwdriver and pop that little lock loose, and then you can lift this whole air cleaner assembly off the engine. One other thing that I do need to note is you'll see the rod or screw right here that actually holds the air cleaner lid. due to the fact that there's very little clearance in here to work, this screw will have to be removed, and this one is loose enough that I can take it out by hand, and you just rotate it counterclockwise until it's completely out. And I think we're almost there. We got it. It's out. I'm going to set it right over here. And now all of this will come out of the engine. After removing the air filter housing, I did see evidence of what made me think that something could be living inside the air filter, because there are pecan holes located on top of the engine here, which tells me that more than likely a family of some sort of rodent has been residing up here. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to come in here and squeeze these two tabs, and you're going to unplug your fuel injectors. You just squeeze them kind of gently, because on a 1989 vehicle they're pretty old. And there are your injectors, and we're going to show you how to get those out. There are 8 Torx head screws up here on the very top of the injector cover. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they are a T20 Torx. So you want to remove these screws, and make sure that as you're removing them that you hold on to them very tight, because you don't want those things to drop down inside the engine. Very, very important. Hold on to them tight. After removing the bolts and the cover from the injectors, your 2 fuel injectors are sitting right here on top of the throttle body. You can take a pair of pliers and just grab a hold of these prongs and gently pull up on the injectors. You might have to wiggle them just a little bit, but they will generally just pull out of their respective slots with no problems. After removing the injectors, you want to look inside each injector cup and make sure that everything is nice and clean. Whenever you remove the cover, you could possibly have some gasket to stick up here, and at that time you would want to clean up the old gasket material. You also want to inspect the cover. The gasket will generally stick to the cover more than it will the throttle body housing itself, and so you will come in here and you will clean up all the any old gasket residue. There's also a small gasket that goes right here. This one is kind of difficult to get everything off of it because of the way that it's made, but once you get all that clean, you might want to take you some carburetor cleaner or something and spray everything down, then blow it off. Make sure it's nice and dry, and then we will begin the process of putting everything back together. After removing any gasket material and cleaning everything up, you want to then make sure there's an O-ring that goes on the bottom of the injector right here, and that O-ring goes down in this little slot down here. And I found out that the best way to do this is to actually take this O-ring and place it down into the injector cup and work it around with your finger until it slides down into the slot in the bottom of the injector cup. You do this for both sides. After placing the O-rings down here in the bottom of each cup, you then take your injector, and you will notice that I got the injector propped up here. There is a pin right here on the bottom of the injector. Now this pin will need to line up with this slot so that it can be fully seated down into the throttle body. And on the right hand side, the slot on this one is facing forward, and then over here on the left hand side, you can see the slot right down here. It's actually facing towards the rear of the vehicle. Just be really sure that as you're pushing these injectors down in there, that these slots are lining up. Otherwise, the injector will not fully seat into the throttle body. Place the throttle body cover back on and put your 8 screws in. You will notice that these 3 screws right here are a little longer than the other 5. Make sure that you do get these right, because if you put the longer screw into a shorter hole, you could take a risk of damaging it due to it bottoming out before it gets tight, and then tighten everything up. After tightening all the bolts, take your wires, not your lines but your wires, push them back down over onto the injectors, and they will clip on the injector. Just make sure you got the prongs lined up, push them down till they lock, and now you are ready to put the battery back connected to the vehicle, and then let's see if we can crank it up.